So thank you for coming. This event is brought to you by Data Talks Club, which is a Slack community of people who like data. We have weekly events, two types of weekly events. Today we have a more technical event. We usually have these events on Tuesday. Today is the last technical event of this year. And after this one, we'll take a break for approximately 1 month, and then we will resume in the next month. And also on Friday, we have more like a podcast, like a discussion. This week on Friday, we will have a discussion about mentoring, and we will again take a break. And today the topic is a new tool from AWS called Glue DataBrew, and Dmitry will talk about it more. And Dmitry is actually a returning star. He already gave a talk here at Data Talks. One of our first event here was actually presented by Dmitry about AWS SageMaker. And in our YouTube channel, this is one of the most viewed videos. For questions today, we will use Slido. I will share a link with you now. And during the talk, whenever you have a question, just go to Slido and ask your question there. And then at the end of the talk, we will go through these questions. And I will put it now to chat. And Dmitry, the floor is yours.
Hey there, nice to see you all again. So on this very nice and I think the last, as you said, the last technical presentation and meeting of this year. So I think we can start. So let me share my screen then. Can you see it right now?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. One moment. Yeah, so basically I would like to discuss and talk today regarding the new tool by AWS called AWS Glue DataBrew, which is like a really fresh, new and brand new. So which was basically invented by AWS in around 1 month ago. So they make the introduction, I think, around middle of November, something like that. So, and the purpose of today's presentation is to basically make some like a little live coding session with AWS Glue DataBrew and see altogether how it works and what are his advantages or disadvantages, and how, for example, data scientists or data analysts can use this tool for their own work. So basically you can see my screen. So we are in the AWS Management Console. Basically on this presentation, I will work with the well-known dataset called Airbnb dataset of New York open listing data. So here is the link to that. So afterwards, so I'm pretty sure that it's quite a well-known data set, and I think most of you should know it, I assume, yeah, but if not, so we will send you the link after the presentation so that you can check this data set by yourself. Yeah, so here is the link to the kaggle.com, and here, for example, it's one of the places that you can find the this open data set. So how it's look like, this is the typical CSV file with different features. So it's quite interesting due to the fact that you have here a lot of things basically to use in your data analysis. So you have, for example, the categorical features, you have continuous features, yeah, so you have IDs, you have missing values, and you even have geographical coordinates, yeah. So basically this is giving the giving for us the information that is quite interesting data set, and you can use it for a variety of purposes, like not only for the modeling and for prediction, but also for data visualization and reporting, which is basically very sufficient for us, because the purpose of this tool is, I would say, it's kind of like a cross-functional. So this tool will work both for data analysis team and also for data science team. So let's go back. Before going to AWS Glue DataBrew, so basically I will go to first to S3. So all the data was downloaded and imported to the and uploaded to S3 bucket. So let's go here. And here you see like two buckets that we will use. So it's called Airbnb buck S3. So where we have the same CSV file that we will use for the presentation. And the second bucket is currently empty. So we will use it for storing different artifacts and different output of the AWS Glue DataBrew during our analysis. So finally, let's go to AWS Glue DataBrew. And here is the main page for the new tool. So as you can see from the name of this tool, so this is like the part of the name called AWS Glue, which is basically a very well-known and famous AWS tool for ETL, extract a transformation load. And basically, this is also really helpful tool, not only for software developers, but also for data analysts and data scientists, because with AWS Glue, data scientists can establish their data ETLs, creating the pipelines for getting the data, like preprocessing the data and applying then to the different models. Yeah, so but also in this name you can see the second part called DataBrew. That's kind of giving you the hint that this would be the somehow the version of AWS Glue that was intended to use for specific data purposes. So DataBrew is made both for, as I already told, for data scientists and data analysts. So for example, if you are a data analyst, you can use DataBrew for reporting, for visualization, for creating different dashboards, etc. Yeah, so finding some different statistics, etc. Yeah, so if you are data scientists, so the main purpose for you to use DataBrew is to get the descriptive statistics. Yeah, so because DataBrew providing you the rich descriptive statistics on the fly, so it's calculating in the columns, and then you can have an access to that, and also doing the pre-processing to your data set before actually applying to your model. Because also this is the second benefit of DataBrew, that it has a lot of pre-built transformation operations, yeah, preprocessors. So of course, some of them are still in the progress. So for example, like a log transformation, we will, or some other function, which we will talk about later on, but the main are there. And it's really helpful for the data scientists to create the preprocessing jobs before actually putting this data into the model for example, for classification purposes or for regression purposes. Yeah, and it's also, so the next advantage here, so that is really fast, and it's kind of really helping you to deal with your data and preprocess your data in a really fast manner. Yeah, so that should be, so kind of if we summarize this points, so this should be like a good alternative for the data science team or for data analyst team to basically use it for their data preparation parts. Yeah. So, but let's check it. So let's do the small example and see how it works. So first of all, we need to create the project. So basically, you can think of project as like a different entities, and in this entity, you will perform the needed operation, for example, visualization or preprocessing based on your needs. What do you want to achieve with your data? So we will create the project. So first of all, we need to give the name of this project. So for example, Airbnb project. Firstly, we can see that it's automatically creating the thing called recipe. What is recipe is basically, you can think of it as a schema-based file, yeah, that is using for preprocessing purposes. So basically, this is, you can think of it as a file with the steps that will be executing accordingly in the jobs. So when you're creating the jobs, so basically you can take the different recipe and apply it to your data. So meaning that it will take your schema file, read all the steps that you need to do. For example, delete some columns, create some columns, make the scaling of the continuous variable, or for example, creating the one hot encoder from your categorical features, and apply it to all of your data that you have, which is quite handy. And it's one of the benefits of using this tool. So then basically we need to select a data set for our analysis. So there are a couple of ways how you can do that. So you can basically use imported data sets or sample files, or create the new data set. So we will create the new data set. It's called, for example, Airbnb set. So there are also opportunities how you can do that. So for example, you can use some simple file uploads, or using, for example, S3 or Redshift or RDS or other storages available on AWS. So in our purpose, we will use S3. Basically, we just need to type the link to our bucket. So our bucket called Airbnb bucket 3. And then we just need to specify the file. For example, this will be our file, AB NYC for Airbnb NYC listing. Afterwards, we just need to select the IAM role. So this is pretty much the same as for all the other different services of AWS, that you need to basically first create the role, then to define the permissions for this role, and then to assign this role to your service. So AWS Glue DataBrew is not different from that. So you also need to create the role, make the apply needed privileges, and then use it for your project. So we select this one, already predefined, and put the create project. So after that, we see the main window of the project. So here is the fancy visualization telling us that the some computation is going in the background. So that is giving the provisioning of the resources. Then it's creating the data frame based on your input data. Then basically computing the rich descriptive statistics that will be available on the screen on the columns. And this is very handy, it's very useful, because, for example, you can see some main statistics like mean, median, minimum and maximum, and, for example, quantiles, yeah, so which is super cool. And you can see it also alongside with the distribution for this feature, which is really helpful both for data analysts and for data scientists. So right now we are on the stage of generating data statistics, and here we are. So here is our data set in the Airbnb project. So you can see on the top of the screen are a lot of predefined transformation operations. So there are a lot of them. So you can, for example, split or merge columns, create or rename the text, etc., etc., etc. Also, you can apply some different mathematical functions And also, which is very cool, you can basically also have um, um, the opportunity to create SQL scripts. So for example, if we go here, so here is how it's look like. So we can basically do the group by operation, and afterwards, for example, we can do the joins, or we can do the joins immediately. So for example, connect the additional data set and then do the joins based on some similar IDs that we have in both of our data sets. So if we go to the project, so for example, the join, yeah, so how it works. So we select the data set or connect the new data set, and then basically then we can specify join details. So the type of the join that you can use, for example, inner or full outer or right or left join, and basically perform the join operation and receive the new entity, the new data set that you can use for your purposes. So we're going back, and here is once again how our data looks like. So we have features here. You can see the columns, and which is really cool, we have the rich statistics already calculated. So here we have the basically the histogram alongside with the statistics itself. Yeah, as I already said, we have quite um, quite a lot of statistics, descriptive statistics here. So for example, we have minimum, maximum, mean, median, and quantiles, which is super cool, I would say. That is very handy and useful for the analysis. So, and what we can do with that. So imagine that we trying to use this data set and trying to prepare it for solving the prediction task. So this data set is based on the regression problem, because the idea to basically predict the price column, which is typical continuous variable. So we're solving the regression problem here. So what we can do to achieve this problem? So we can prepare our recipe. Yeah, so, and the recipe you can see in the right part of the page. So basically, we will just add here the steps that we would need to perform on our full data set. And it's also very important things to know that right now we are working on only on same sample data. So the maximum number of observation that we can use currently, it's 5,000 observations. So they have the plan to increase this value, but the idea to basically state like that. So the idea is pretty simple. So you do the first visualization and first calculation only on the sample, just to get familiar with the data and to understand what exact steps of the preprocessing you need to do. And then with a little help of recipes, you can create the jobs and then apply the steps on the whole data set that you have, for example, in your S3 bucket or in some other storage system. So this is basically the idea how the tool is designed to work on the preprocessing side. So let's do some examples and see how it works. So if we working with a column, so we have two possibilities how to do that. So the first possibility is we can select the column itself, and here um, select the column action. And here we see a lot of action that we can perform on this particular column, which is also cool that in immediately on the right side of the page, you can see also the column details. So the data quality, so the number, for example, of missing values, the value distribution, and the distinct unique values that this feature has. So this is the first way of how to basically apply the transformation. And the second way is basically using the recipe. So you can click add step and then select the operation, what you would like to do, and then basically select the columns that you would like to use for this certain operation. So we will try both. So let's do it. So for example, what we can do as a preparational step for our regression model. So of course we have IDs and we don't need IDs for our regression model. So imagine that we will create something simple like a linear regression model, maybe a linear regression, like to be like a super simple. So we don't need IDs because it doesn't give us a lot of valuable information. So we can basically remove that. So we can click on delete. And then basically we can apply it one by one or select the source columns, all the columns that we would like to delete. So for example, we can select ID, host ID, and for example, also host name. Yeah. Yeah. So after that, we can also click on the preview changes. So it will actually show us the changes which will happening after performing this operation, but not actually performing it. So let's do that. So the column should turn red or orange, I would say. And basically that would give us an information that they will go away after we perform the operation. So we click apply. And this step is saving to our recipe. So here is this step. It's called delete column. Step applied successfully, and it's called delete column ID, host ID, and name. So the number of columns and the names of these columns that we would delete in our data set. So what else we can do? So we have, for example, the categorical features. So also, obviously, we cannot use it for our model straightforwardly. Yeah, so we need to transform them to the discrete values. Yeah, so we can also do that. For example, we select neighborhood group. We have here 5 values. So basically, this can be a good idea to perform one hot encoding and to create 5 different columns based on the binary logic. Yeah, so we select that, select the source column, for example, neighborhood group. Yeah, and basically that would create us 5 new columns based on the binary logic of this column. So if we click apply, so we should receive these 5 columns that we can use for our regression purposes. So here they are. So after that, of course, we don't need the initial column, so we can also delete it and apply. What else? Yeah, so let's go there. So for example, what we can do with the neighborhoods. With the neighborhoods is a different situation. We have a lot of categorical, distinct categorical values. Therefore, doing one hot encoding would be quite dangerous for linear model, especially. Yeah? Therefore, we can do the label encoding and do it in a smart way. So for example, we can label encoder top 5, and then the rest of the categorical values that creating the rest of distribution, that would create a new distinct value, distinct label. So let's do it like that. And for that, I would say we can try another approach. So we worked with the column. So let's right now work with the steps inside of the recipe. We will add a step and basically go down. And here we can see categorical data encoding possibility. We click on that. So we select the neighborhood column, select map top to 5 values, like the biggest values. And basically the others, we would put it like a 0 label, and the rest would be the different one. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Yeah. So we're creating the additional column, which is called, for example, neighborhood mapped apply. So after this operation, we should create the new column with the label encoded data. Here it is. So afterwards, we can basically delete the initial one because we don't need it. What else? So basically missing values. So missing values, for example, if we go and check the other features, we can see here, for example, null values in the column called last review. So, and also in the reviews per month. So what we can do, so we can basically add step and work with this missing values. Yeah. So for example, we can create and or just choose the standard let's say action to fill the missing values. For example, here we can fill it with the most frequent, with mode, with custom value, or with a numeric aggregate. So for example, we can do it with average. In our case, the distributions is not, I would say, super cruel that we can use median. So we can use basically average and apply it to that. So the idea after that, we need to receive the new column with already filled out null values. Yeah, so we select the reviews, reviews per month, for example, and apply. So if it goes fine, so we should replace the null values, and you can see it right here. So we replace it with average. What else we can do? So for example, if we working with the planning to work with the linear model, so of course the scaling of the continuous variable is the key. So because it's quite important for the linear model, very important. Well, therefore, we can also do the scaling based on the also different techniques. So we can use, for example, min-max scalar or mean, or for example, z index, yeah, for doing that. So let's add the step and work with the scaling. So for example, we can do the mean normalization and select the column. So for example, availability 365. So here, and click the apply. So here is the normalized column. So when we basically can get rid of the initial one. So click apply. Yeah, so you can see that there's quite a lot already steps in the recipe. And basically, then we can test how it will work on the whole data set. But before that, let's check the different possibilities of data visualization that AWS Glue DataBrew provides. So this is the initial one, it's called grid, which is simple, I would say, table. Not very simple because it's also have calculating the histogram of the distribution and the statistics. So we can think of that as a table with statistics. Also schema based, which is super handy because here you can define what columns you would like to show or hide, change the column name, change the type of the certain column, yeah, check the data quality, for example, whether there are missing values or not in this particular column, and also check the value distribution and different box plots metrics, yeah, such as mean and median. And profile. Yeah, so profile is basically the next step, which we will go into. So let's switch to the initial project. So here we have the recipe. What to do with that? So if we think that there is basically the final step has been created, so we are ready to use it. So we can just put the publish, and then the recipe will go to the recipe directory, and we can use it for our main jobs and apply it to our main data set. So we push the publish button. Here is the opportunity to fill the version description. So for example, we can put something like latest to basically give us the information that it would be the latest actual recipe that we will use for this particular data set. So and click publish. So if we go to the recipes directory, here is the recipe. So it's immediately created. And for example, if we select it, there is the possibility to download it because we already told that this is the schema file. So therefore, this is the main download options are schema based, which is YAML file or JSON file. Yeah. So you can download it, for example, store it and use it for some like future purposes, or you can immediately create the job with this recipe. So, and we will do like that. So there are a couple of possibilities how you do that. So you can do it inside of the recipe directory by clicking create job with this recipe, or you can go to the jobs directory. So we will do like that. And here is the jobs directory. So there are a couple of possibilities that you can use here. So this is the recipe jobs. So the idea of this recipe jobs that you take this recipe file, take your data set, but in this case, the whole data set, not the sample, and apply the steps of the preprocessing on the whole data set. And then in the end, as an output, you receive the file, and then basically you can select what type of this file you will have. There are a lot of varieties. So for example, CSV, JSON, TXT, Parquet, etc., etc. So like for a variety of purposes. The second way of how to interact with jobs is called so-called profile jobs. This is basically creating the, let's say, the whole EDA part, explanatory data analysis for all the whole data set. Yeah. So therefore, beforehand, we work with a sample. So by using profile jobs, we can create the EDA part. So the whole descriptive statistics with the correlation metrics, yeah, with some plots for all of our data set that we will use. So, and it's also running by job. So the idea that basically job is the main blocker. Yeah. So, and you use it for working with the whole data set and basically applying the recipe, for example, for creating the pre-processing and creating the profile for EDA. So yeah, if we're talking about the recipe jobs, you can think of, for example, scikit-learn pipelines. This is very similar. Therefore, like, this is should be think as a pipeline. Therefore, you have some operations, some estimators that doing something, for example, transform or predict, and they're basically are being executed in some order. For example, let's say doing, so you have like a pipeline with a label encoder, standard scaler, and then, for example, linear regression. So in our case, it should be something similar. And so the purpose of this recipe job. And profile jobs is basically, you can think of like a basic EDA that you can perform in Python for your data set. Also, there's very nice possibility to schedule the operations. So basically, you can create the job that will automate the process. So which is really handy, which really help you if you need to have the, let's say, if you need to run these jobs, for example, every night and get the new refreshed information. Yeah, so let us start with the recipe job and apply to our data. So we will create a job. For that, we need to put the name. So for example, also Airbnb job. Create recipe job. So we need to identify the data set. So this is called Airbnb data set, but in our case, that would be the whole data set, not the sample. And select the recipe, which will be used for applying for this particular data set. So this is our recipe. This is also cool that you can select the version. For example, it's in our case, it's version 1.0, so the latest one. You can see it here. And specifying the job output settings. So for example, the file with the file type that we will select, for example, the variety, as already told. For example, we put the CSV and put also the, let's say here, Airbnb bug S3. So here you can create the scheduling for automatization. Yeah, so it's also possible to do it here. And also in the end, as usual, you select the role for basically permission. So here you can see the green line that is created recipe job called Airbnb recipe job. And here is the output. So we have here the job run ID, also the status that here is actually running right now. So and the runtime when it will be finished or when it's caused the error, for example, and the output, so the file that will eventually created after it will finish. So here, if we go deeper, so we can also see the job details, for example, how it's look like. So where is it stored? What's the data type? What is associated scheduling perspective, etc. And it's also super cool features called the, data lineage. So therefore, it's creating some like a fancy visualization of the process, like a diagram of the process, and basically combining all the steps that you took for creating this job. So the data, for example, in our case was taken from S3 bucket. Yeah, so it's called abnyc.csv dataset. So it's putting to the dataset entity of the AWS Glue DataBrew. It was created the recipe that was putting into the job, and job is running, and the result of this job would be also the CSV file that will go to the S3 bucket. So for example, right now it's running. When it will be finished, so it also will be displayed here, also as in the other sections. So for example, like a job run history. What we can do else, so we can also do the profiling jobs. We go to the profile jobs section and create the job. So it's also, let's call it Airbnb profile job, and create profile job. Yeah, so we also need to specify the data set. So of course you can request the limited increase for especially big data sets. Therefore, there's also the possibility to do that. And also AWS has plans to increase the limits that you can use without requesting an some higher limit, for example. Also here you're specifying the job output settings in this sense, because profile, so EDA, it would be so the result of that would be kind of like a schema based. So therefore, the file type output would be JSON, and we need to specify the location for storing this, let's say, artifact information. So for that, we will use the empty bucket called Airbnb profile, put it there. Also, here is the same possibilities to make the additional control settings. Yeah, for example, advanced job settings or scheduling purposes. And tags, for example, if you need. And also, like you select the permission and create and run the job. So for example, we did it. So we created the new profile job, which is also is available on the screen in the job run history. And for example, we can check it by that. Yeah. So let's go to the jobs. Yeah, so if we go back to the recipe jobs, we can see that the our previous recipe job was finished successfully. So, and basically here is the job input that we used. Job output is basically the file that we can check. Here it is. So we can go deeper to the S3 bucket and for example, download it, or for example, which is a really nice idea how to use AWS Glue DataBrew. For example, we can make the connection from SageMaker to this S3 bucket and take it, for example, and then perform our linear regression as we thought to do. Yeah. And here is some like a statistical information, like last run and when it was created. If we go to the profile jobs, it's still running. So when it will finish, so we will be able to go to the profiling section, which will give us the information about the main statistics and EDA for whole of our dataset. Before we have this information, let's go to what's new tab. And here is basically the, let's say, the majority of information that AWS put for this new tool. So basically, they stating that AWS Glue DataBrew is the new visualization tool that can be used both for data analysis and for data science. So therefore, it's quite fast and it has a lot of pre-built transformation options. Therefore, for example, that would be a good option for using by data scientists. And for example, you can use it also for data analysis if you would like to create some dashboards and show it, for example, for to business or to managers. Yeah, so right now it's available in the certain regions, but I think it's just the matter of time. So I would say that they would, as with the other AWS sources, they would introduce the new regions from time to time. So right now there are a couple of US regions that is available, and a couple of European and Asian. Yeah. So basically, if we go back to the profile job, so we can see here that it's succeed, and we can, as an output, see the data profile of this file. Here is the data profile. So I would say it's look like typical EDA that one can create in Python. So therefore, the amount of the columns, the data types, the missing and duplicate rows, the correlation, etc., etc. And for example, you can also check the column statistics and even have the data insights. So I would say it's quite raw at this point. So there's data insights or recommendation, but the idea of AWS to kind of increase the quality of that and create as them as a additional source of the information that would help the data scientists to make some interesting moves, for example, for the data. And also here we can check the data lineage for the results of this profile job. Yeah, so it's the same as we did with the recipe job. Yeah, and yeah, for example, we can go back to the project itself. Yeah, and yeah, see how the features look like. So yeah, so if we summarize what we have, so it's quite interesting. So like a very interesting tool that we have. AWS Glue DataBrew has a lot of advantages in my point of view, and due to the speed of the process and applying the preprocessing steps. I would say that's the biggest disadvantage, that right now the profiling should be improved. Yeah, because I would say it's quite basic for EDA purposes. So if they can create some better version of EDA with, for example, more distribution plots, yeah, with some more statistical information, so that would be really a big deal. And I would say that's the disadvantage, but I think that is kind of developing and should develop in the future. That's right now, of course, they have a lot of pre-built transformation, but a lot of they also don't have. So for example, if we go to the features once again, so for example, price, yeah. So the idea, if we doing the regression, so would be a good idea, for example, to create the, let's say, the log transformer on the target variable. So, yeah, so here we don't have the possibility to do that, and this is quite sad. Yeah, but so, and this is only one example, like for some missing functions. Yeah, but I think that should improve in the next release. Yeah, so I would say that is it from my side. So, and I think that is a good time to answer some questions if they are.
Yeah, thank you, Dmitry. We actually do have quite a few questions. So let me share my screen. Yeah, so we Ankush is asking if it is using some sort of distributed system in the background, like Spark or MapReduce. Do you have any idea what is inside this thing?
Yeah, I think I don't know like precisely what they use. So, but I think this is something like that. So most probably they use EMR or some like a cluster with, I would say, with Hadoop and Spark. Yeah. which should be the most probable idea.
And just a related question. Yeah, let's say if our data set is big, like can we set some sort of degree of parallelism? Like let's say we want to finish it as soon as possible, and we can say, okay, I want to have 50 machines that are processing it or something like that. So we
No,
want to do.
right now, I don't know whether it will be in the next release. Right now, it's not possible due to the fact
Okay.
that I would say they have something like that in the background, some cluster, which they using for calculating. But right now, it's also the disadvantage that you cannot basically, increase the horsepower if you need.
Okay.
Yes. Manually, you can do it like only by request, so which is not very handy.
Okay. Yeah, the next question is, can it read other formats like Avro and Parquet? I think it can. I
Yeah,
remember like when
sure. Yeah,
you
sure.
were showing like the
Yeah,
input format was CSV, Avro,
yeah.
Parquet, and there were some other
Hmm.
formats.
Yeah,
And I guess
exactly. So, mhm.
it also can read from, let's say, if we have our database, I don't know, if we use some sort of like maybe Hive or Glue, we can also
Mhm.
use a SQL query for
Yeah,
getting the data,
yeah.
right?
Hmm. Yeah, this is absolutely true. So you can use this data types for reading, also for writing. You can write also in Avro and Parquet. So, and therefore you can use some different sources of the data, for example, on AWS like S3, RDS, or HDFS, yeah, and take the data from there in the certain formats.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next question is, as I understood, you cannot load the whole data because there is limit 5,000 rows. Can we somehow calculate the average of a column for the whole data set?
Yes, we
When
can,
I
and
think,
basically, yeah,
yep, sorry.
and we can basically do that with the profile job. So therefore, for the profile job, you can use the whole data set and basically creating the average for the column of the whole data set. Yeah. So in the sample, for sure not, but this was the idea. Basically, that's kind of giving the velocity of the process. Yeah. But if you would like to use job, so yes, no problem to do that.
Yeah, thank you. Then, yeah, it looks cool, but how customizable it is? Like, let's say you said like it's not like if you want to do a log transformation, there is no such thing. But can you actually go ahead and implement something yourself, like apply some sort of custom transformation to a column?
I didn't hear that they introduced that, so maybe that would be in the next release, but right now not. So the idea that's basically what you create, what you use. Um, so at least I didn't see any updates on this point, but yeah, I agree that, for example, to make something similar to custom estimators in scikit-learn pipeline would be super cool. Yeah. So for example, if one can create some function or estimator if there are no such in the standard version of the recipe. Yeah.
Because I think it's a limitation that they don't have this log transform. But if we had a way to actually just implement it ourselves, then it would be a big advantage. Okay.
Yeah, I agree, but it's also, I would say, hard to judge because this is the first release, so the product is 1 month, so it's quite hard to say in what direction they will go. So probably they should kind of give the opportunity to do so. Yeah.
And another question from Ankush: can we schedule the job? For example, yeah, I think you showed that, like how to schedule, but also like if we can maybe execute it from cron job or link it with Lambda function and trigger when there is a new file in S3 bucket.
Yeah, no problem. So for example, the main idea is to use CloudWatch. So, and basically like, of course, you can also introduce Lambda or do it without Lambda or just with a simple and straightforward CloudWatch. But yeah, so basically you have, let's say, something like for handling, some handler that's taking your job, your scheduling, and kind of take it. Yeah. So, and run it.
It's probably possible to execute it from Bota 3, right?
Yeah, sure.
And then it means that you can also do it from Lambda or from your own computer or
Yeah, yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, and it was the idea also to basically kind of connect it with the other sources, yeah, such as Athena or SageMaker. Yeah, so because they're all based in any way on S3, and this would be the same.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so if you have any more questions, now it's the right time to ask.
Or we can do it afterwards if the new ideas will happen. So we can do it in Slack.
Okay. Yeah, so Stefan is saying need to run. Thanks a lot for the session, Dmitry.
Thank you very much as well. Yeah, run is a good idea always.
Yeah, thanks a lot for presenting. This looks like a very interesting tool. I want to try it as well. So thanks a lot for presenting it and for showing us how to use it.
No problem. Thank you very much for inviting.
Thanks everyone for attending.
Ciao, ciao.
So have a nice day. Goodbye.